I guess I've known Tony for almost 20 years now. I remember we met for the first time at Ryan's in Hickson. He invited me to eat, and he was pretty new in town, and he invited me to eat, so I went down there and ate with him, and had a good time. Found out he lived on Signal Mountain, gave him a hard time about that because I went to school at Red Bank, and we always made fun of Signal Mountain guys, so I gave him a hard time. But Tony quickly became a close friend, and he invited me to an Eagle Venture project, which is a 2-year project for youth pastors, and being involved in that really dramatically changed the way I looked at youth ministry and my role as a leader. It was an incredible challenge during those 2 years of going on some weekend retreats and the training that we had, intensive training, and it was a great time. I felt like I grew so much in the Lord and just in my knowledge of what it meant to be a youth pastor. When I think of Tony, I think of a man of great wisdom. I think of a man that is so loyal to God and totally committed and faithful to God. And he's been a great example of what it means to follow Christ. And I know that he's had a very, very difficult time with Rhonda's sickness. And I've watched his faith just continue to grow and be so focused on God, even through that struggle. And Tony, I really appreciate your friendship, and it's meant a lot to me.
I've known Tony Souder for about 15 years, and one of the first memories I have of Tony was about 14 years ago when I asked Tony to come and share with a group of youth leaders before camp. And Tony came and just kind of invested in a group of youth pastors, and he may not even remember this or how big of a deal it was, but Tony was very instrumental in not only being a friend to me in youth ministry, but being a mentor and even shaping theology in my life. And I remember at this retreat that Tony was investing in some youth leaders, that he asked me some tough questions that really kind of set me on a path towards kind of understanding Scripture and understanding theology in the light of who God is. And ever since then, Tony has been someone that I've leaned on, someone that I've called for wisdom on a numerous amount of times. And I'm just so thankful for his friendship. I think of when I got married and I left the church that I was working at, really kind of unsure about ministry and unsure about the direction God was taking me. And Tony was one of the first calls I made about trying to discern what God's will was for my life. And Tony really prayed with me and loved me well during that season. And Tony's continued to be a friend. And as I think about even now and in the life of our church and doing Pray For Me, and as I read the prayers that Tony has written down, how they are just saturated with God and saturated with the gospel. And I know those have just come out of a life that has been lived in through some deep times with the Lord. And I'm just so thankful for Tony and for his heart and his friendship and his wisdom in my life over the years.
I've known Tony for about 10 years, and he's been used at a couple, I don't know if he knows it or not, a couple of very instrumental points in my life. I know at one point I was making a pretty large life decision, and I was talking to Mickey about it actually, and Mickey felt like I was making the wrong decision, that it was for the wrong motives, and he said, well, I think you need to go talk to Tony Souder. He's just got a lot of wisdom about things like that. And I remember I scheduled a lunch with Tony and went down there, and he spoke just incredible wisdom in my life that came, what I felt like, directly from God. Changed my decision on that. I went back, I remember telling Mickey about it, and Mickey was like, Tony's just got a way of speaking into your life and making things happen like that. And probably the other thing that I remember most about my relationship with Tony is when there was a transition in my life when I was an early believer where I was very legalistic, very hard on myself, and hard on other people, making rules and our obedience to Christ everything, and kind of missing the whole point of grace. And through some conversations with Tony, I've never said this to him before, but it was really my conversations with Tony that served as a catalyst to start to open my eyes to grace and to be able to embrace the love of Jesus in my life. And it's changed the way that I look at God and the way that I look at myself and the way that I look at other people. So I just appreciate Tony so much and all that he's done for me.
Hey Tony, I'm so sorry that I am not there this morning with you and with the congregation at Mill Valley Baptist. Ironically, I am on a trip this weekend with students. When I think of you as on this journey that you've been with students all along the way, and also training adults to work with students. I can think all the way back when I was in college, and Mickey and I were starting to work with youth, and we did not know what we were doing. And I remember you coming alongside of us, and there were so many things that I learned from you, not only in trainings, but also watching you and just watching you in your life. Things that stand out to me is your energy that is crazy, your authenticity. I know when I talk to you or when I see you working with students that what I see is exactly who you are. I just love your enthusiasm. That's what comes to mind a lot of times when I see you. You're always there, you're in that moment, and you have such a passion and enthusiasm for the Lord, and you know what He has called you to do and as you work with young people. And as I work with young people more and more throughout my life, I know it is so apparent that I'm honest with them and truthful with them. And I just thank you so much for setting that example for me. You will never know how much I appreciate it. I hope you have a great time today with Mill Valley Baptist. And we just want to thank you so much for your work and for your love of the Lord. Thank you, brother.